try to get a little more specific on one of the other advantages of having this open grid. As I understand it, it's not just the fact that you can take advantage of network effects, but it's also that someone could create a world that fits the protocols so that it will will communicate with the others, but could have very different capabilities inside. And so I'm just trying to get some confirmation that I'm thinking about this correctly. So, for example, someone, as I understand it, someone could create a world that has incredible building tools so that you can do much more effective 3D modeling or something like that. So you could take your object from Second Life, put it in that world, work on it, make it better, more beautiful, more complex, and so on, bring it back. Is that the direction you see this going? Worlds with very different capabilities, but
right,
following common protocols?
Yes, although I think the capabilities are, what you've described is more like a version of the viewer rather than a version of a world. I would think a better example of a world would be more like a world which was, say, as an example, maybe a world in which the simulator that was simulating those regions was deeply connected to, say, I don't know, the truck monitoring of trucks through some shipping company's network, so that the simulator actually was somehow a deep 3D immersion experience of that, of their data, of what was going on in their business. Or an example of a region in which the experience had certain properties, or maybe even the scripting environment was different or specific to that region, to enable a different kind of entertainment experience, or a different kind of perhaps even, say, educational experience, or even science. I could imagine different kinds of regions with properties like connected to science labs or science experiments for scientific visualization.
Right, there was a group in Tokyo that took an OpenSim and hooked up a real physics simulator to it, so that you could do some real-world astronomy experiments to look at the visualization results of that. That sort of thing where somebody says, well, look, here's a new property that I can put into the simulation that's specialized. We don't need to have in every simulator in the grid, but adds value to the whole collection of possible simulators, I think would be a huge example of that. And I think we're going to see this. Somebody asked in back chat, I just want to touch on this briefly, why behind the firewall? And it's a related answer, because there are cases where you want to keep specialized content, that you care about. So, for example, if you want to train people on, in a real-life scenario that we've discussed, a number of customers, human resources issues, where you want to do sensitivity training, where you want to do scenarios of hostile customers, you might well not want to do that in public, but you want your employees to experience it, and an immersive environment's a great way to do it. You can hire up a half dozen people to role-play hostile customers and force your client reps to actually interact with them in this lovely low cost and not actually harming real people. You're not flying them around the world to do this, but they get a very realistic experience of it. And so there are lots of variations on what we do with the world today that you might imagine wanting to do over time.
Can you give us a sense of the timeline for this? Where are we going to be in 18 months?
We're both quiet.
Silence. No, it's hard to get these two to just be quiet.
No,
That's right.
I want to give a coherent answer.
Yeah. I don't want to promise anything here by any stretch, because we are proceeding slowly, we're proceeding openly, and we think there will be no grand surprises 18 months out. Everyone was going to know where things are coming as they proceed. I believe.
Let's give some.
Sure.
Let's give a couple of hallmarks of sort of where we're looking. One of the deep questions that we have to untangle and we've been discussing is how to handle content, and in particular how to handle the rights of content creators. There's a series of technical work which involves managing trust so that you have a legal and technical relationship with other grids that supports the content creation. We didn't skip inventory just because it's hard. We also skipped inventory. It's not just because it's hard on the technical basis. We skipped inventory because it's hard to do fairly and correctly. You want to do it correctly. There's a bunch of work having to do with details like what does it even mean to share a map? how do you manage the map? Right now, lots of parts of the current world assume there's one map, there's one search function, there's one currency, there's one place to find events, and all of those things have to gradually be unentangled and made more separable. At the same time, we will have to tackle trust. We will have to tackle, things which are important to residents, important to content creators, important to landowners. We don't want and can't, in fact, succeed at doing these in ways which hurt the existing community and hurt the existing application. We want to do this as a positive step. So what are you going to look for? I think you're going to look for a series of technical activities where we say, here's a new facet that's been discussed and prototyped and discussed in meetings, and now here's a beta of it that gets added into the current beta so that you trust this region, and now you can start asking questions like what policies can you change? And over time, you get boards where it's much harder to tell if you teleported to an open sim run on a separate grid and an open sim run, a traditional region run by Second Life. I think that's where we're headed. At a specific timeline, I don't think anyone's going to commit to that at the moment.
I will say, I will prognosticate a little bit more than that and say that I think within 18 months, or in the 18-month time frame, it will be possible for most of the people in this audience to actually do this. I don't know to what degree. There will still probably be limitations or restrictions on what actually is possible in that interaction. But I mean, today this is, download a magic viewer, look up a bunch of magic URLs, and you can do it, and you end up Ruth. But I think 18 months from now, this will be actually something that most people will actually be able to do. I'm like, I actually went and did it. Yeah, X, Y, and Z didn't work or wasn't available yet, but you'll actually be able to do it. So I think this will become more of a commonplace idea 18 months from now that will be generally available.
I think we can also say with a fair bit of confidence that between now and 18 months from now, a number of the current thorny issues will become a lot clearer. So, for example, we will have a coherent story about how we're going to manage proving that this region is one we can trust or this region is one we shouldn't give your content to. One of the things that I've said repeatedly, I think is essential, is we have to do this in a way that makes it successful for all the participants. It's not a success if in doing this we ruin, as it were, some of the important properties of what we've built.
So you guys have mentioned policy. That this isn't just a technical issue. There are also policies that need to be set. And one of the for those of the non-technical of us in the metaverse, I know that there's a place where the architecture working group gathers, and a house overlooking it that has a sign that says something like open source equals closed society, which is maybe less of a walled garden issue than a gated community one. But I'm just, how is it that the people who are not technical but are going to be affected by what you do have a voice in what is happening on that interface of policy?
From Linden's end, we intend, in the same way in which I have been holding open office hours for the last year, on the technical side of it, to begin to hold a series of forum and a series of conduits for information from people. I've been working with some other people inside the community group inside Linden Lab to begin to set those up. I know it might have felt like this was a technocracy where we started, but we do recognize there was a tremendous amount of technical framework that had to get laid down before we could even get to the point of actually having a rational discussion about what the options were. And we are now approximately at that point. I expect this fall for those forums to begin to open up and to become available, at least the ones that Linden will hold. In the same way that Linden started the technical forum, the AWG, in my office hours, we highly encourage, just like the AWG existed, that other groups also form forums in which these things can be discussed and looked at. The one thing I will put forth is, remember that for us to think about this as a discussion. This is something that needs to be looked at. It isn't a debate. There aren't two sides. We need to look at and discuss and explore how to go about doing this as virtual worlds grow.